In the name of our God who loves us and calls us to respond. Amen.
Amen.
Be seated, please. I'm going to read a couple of the scriptures passages from the gospel. I won't use the same delightful expression that our deacon did, but he's good. All right. It's likely that the feeding of this 5,000 was one of 5,000 plus was one of the early table talk stories told before the Gospels existed, when the disciples in the early church would gather together to meet and tell stories about Jesus or repeat stories that Jesus told. And some became favorites because down deep they struck a harmonious chord with the identity of the individual, the family, or the group. And so it is with this story, which all four gospel writers eventually put into writing. There are a number of ways this gospel might resonate with us, but let's listen to the story about helping someone in need. As Jesus went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them and cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." Probably no issue paralyzes America and even the church more today than how to help someone. We live in a world of competing experts, conflicting theories, and constant second guessing. How should we educate our children? What's the best form of health care? How do we welcome the immigrants but make certain we can care for our own citizens who have long been here? What are we going to do to help those who are losing their jobs due to AI, due to high prices because of tariffs, due to whatever? Should we be helping Ukraine? Should we be helping any other countries? Helping refugees? What's fair? What's right? Who do we help? And how do we help them? To each of these tough questions, there are at least two totally opposite but reasonable answers. A large crowd comes to hear a famous teacher. Many are sick, most are poor. They are in a desolate part of the country. What we didn't hear this morning, however, is what happened just before all of this. Jesus has just heard that Herod has killed John the Baptist. The crowd is nervous, scared. John was popular with the people. He was known as a holy man. If he was killed, it makes all of them vulnerable. Maybe it's like some of the governors and mayors who saw what happened in Minnesota between ICE and protesters, and they were worried that their city or state might be singled out next. Maybe it's like individuals who feel threatened because of their race, sex, or sexual persuasion or country of origin. They don't feel safe. They feel jittery, needy, vulnerable. Maybe it's like those who feel they have already given up so much and they are afraid of losing more. It's an unsettling feeling. People are sick in more ways than one, and Jesus himself is in need. Jesus decides to take his 12 followers to this distant port of Israel to get away, to grieve, to think, to consider his future. He needs that respite. For Jesus, this is personal. He was close to his cousin John. They played together as children. They shared a passion for serving God the Father. John baptized Jesus. In some ways, it was John who ordained Jesus' ministry. So Jesus is heartbroken. He also knows that he is in danger. He needs to get away to grieve, to think, to pray. But a large, hurting, edgy, and hungry crowd has followed him. What should he do? How should he act? We are told that when he arrives in the boat and looks out at the crowd, he has compassion for them. This is his first instinct when he sees these needy souls waiting for him, to have compassion. Of course, the reasonable thing to do would be as the disciples suggested. Send the crowd into the village to buy food for themselves. It's a fact that 5 loaves and 2 dried fish aren't going to feed 12 hungry men, much less a crowd spread beyond what the eye can see. Jesus could have sent the crowd away, but instead he tells the disciples to feed them. And how are they going to do that? They will need a miracle, something transcending the ordinary laws of nature and defying common expectations of behavior. And Jesus offers more than a miracle, really. He wants the disciples and us to look beyond the limitations of what they think they know in order to see another truth that is before them. Considering their limited resources, of course they proclaim, but we have only. And Jesus is saying, there is enough. God's grace is all around us. The disciples were too blinded by the size of their small offering to see how Jesus might make it grow, how they might make it grow. It's easy to become distracted, to forget the true source of our greatest good. But thanks to the grace of God, when we turn to that place of grace, miracles happen. And this is what Jesus showed his disciples. He looked to heaven, to God his Father. He blessed and broke the loaves, and he gave. He gave to the disciples, who in turn gave to the crowd, and all ate till they were filled. Now, there are some skeptics, voices of reason, who contend that once the disciples brought out the fish and loaves, others in the crowd took out food hidden in their cloaks, and that is how there was enough food to be shared. And maybe that's true, but it hardly matters, because that is not the point of the gospel. This passage is not about God performing a magic show, blessing the basket of food, and poof, pull out the rabbit from the hat. What this passage is about is that out of scarcity can come abundance of God's grace, that through God's love and compassion, we can be moved to act so that all can be filled and cared for. What this passage is about is that there are miracles all around us. They are just waiting to happen. They are happening if we can just see and act with eyes of compassion and faith. I want to share with you another miracle story. It was about this time of the year in 2002 when 9 men were trapped for nearly 80 hours in the mines of Quack Creek, Pennsylvania. The mine was flooded when the wall of a flooded adjacent mine was breached by a coal-cutting machine. The driver of the machine knew immediately that he had breached the barrier. He called to his partner to run. The partner did, but he took time first to get to the phone in the mine and call to the workers in a lower portion of the cave to get out fast. He knew if he didn't do that, they would all die. Then he ran to the other 7 men in their part of the cave. Together they came back to get the driver, who was now separated from them by a raging gully of water. Refusing to leave him, the foreman managed to drive a machine close enough to the driver so he could jump into the scoop of the machine and join the rest of them. Then they inched their way down further into the recesses of the mine to try to get out through another exit before the water reached them. But that way was blocked, so they had to inch their way back up into the water, which by this time was up to their waists. They tried to build a barricade, but it wouldn't hold against the force of the water. There was nothing that they could see to do. They had 1 corned beef sandwich and 2 bottles of water, which they shared, while they placed their bodies close together to create as much warmth as possible in the freezing water. When one person would get cold, the other 8 would huddle around that person to create warmth. Then, when an air supply system that had never before been tried pumped air down to them, they realized for the first time that someone knew they were there, and for a brief period of time they had hope. But when they saw the water rising, their hope diminished, and so they tied their bodies together. One man explained, "We knew we were going to die, and we didn't want our families to have to search for our bodies. We wanted them to find us together." One man asked the others if he would be going to hell because he had not been baptized. The others talked to him about the love of God. They all prayed together. For 3 days they were trapped in that mine. Then on the evening of the 3rd day, rescue workers broke through the chamber where all 9 miners were trapped and huddled together. The miners who had decided early on that they were either going to live or die as a group. Now, some people would argue that this isn't truly a miracle because it was the technology that saved lives. And none of us would argue that the technology wasn't critical. But the technology does not negate the power of God's love present in the lives of those who were part of this story. One of the greatest miracles in this story is that the miners acted selflessly with love for each other at this critical time. And while this is a dramatic story that catches our imagination and attention, thousands of miracles are happening around us all the time. And thousands more are waiting to happen if we would just respond. It can be the smallest of things that God's grace permeates and brings together those people and things that give us a miracle. When we can release our hold on the little bits that we grasp for our own comfort or simply out of fear, and offer them up to the transforming power of God, we share with God in the greatness of creation that can give fulfillment to all. We are extraordinarily blessed. Life is good, even in these difficult times with so much political division in our country. There are numerous opportunities around us to be Christ for someone else. Living in faith is not a passive state of being. Christ calls us to rise together with the courage to accept the grace that empowers us to take a stand with Christ to transform life here and now, so that we, with God, can make a difference. Amen.
Amen.